overlooks. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. Okay, bye. That was Ben. He's going to call you. Hello.
Pull stuff out of your speech.
No problem.
So we'll juxtapose these pieces.
That's no problem.
I'd like to ask you at least one personal question.
Sure.
Would that be all right?
Absolutely. You can ask anything you want. Whether I answer, it's another question.
You ready?
Sure.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3.
David Mixner, welcome to Atlanta.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Now, you were here back in the 60s, did I read, like down in South Georgia registering voters?
Yeah, exactly. I was down in the Albany area and the Macon area.
Americus?
Yeah, Americus, Georgia. Waycross, I think, there's a town down there I was at.
Exactly.
It was in 1968. We were putting the first integrated delegation challenge in the history of Georgia back then.
Right. In your original book, Stranger Among Friends, you trace a lot of that history, including some of your personal relationships. And I like the juxtaposition in the book about the chapters that were purely political and the others that were personal. But you had, if I may, Kit, who died in an automobile accident. And then there was Frank, who mysteriously disappeared in Washington after, you said, a passionate relationship. And then sadly there was Peter, who died of AIDS. Do you think in the gay world that those sort of passionate relationships are sort of what we're all about, or are there really lasting ones? And do you have that faith that there are?
Well, first of all, I don't see anything wrong with passionate relationships or short-term relationships if it's enriching and nourishing and exciting for the individuals involved and healthy for both parties. I try not to put parameters around anyone else's relationship if they're happy. We have many, many long-term relationships. One of the couples that I profile in my new book, Brave Journeys, been together 50 years.
I read about them.
But I think one of the things that we've explored, and maybe one of the gifts we bring society, is that because we have not allowed to be officially sanctioned our relationships in a number of ways, that we've had to explore alternatives. And I think that in many ways that we are seeing in many of the heterosexual community copying some of those alternative ways that people can be together, love each other in a healthy, wonderful, positive sense, and at the same time meet the needs of a very complex society that we live in.
Well, let's talk about the new book, Brave Journeys. You profile over about 50 years, 7 persons, gay men and lesbians, from the 2 ladies in San Francisco who founded Daughters of Bilitis to the new contemporary lady who is really on this forefront of the anti-hate campaign. Is this sort of your sense of the whole span of life? I mean, why these 7 and not others?
Well, we could fill 6 books, quite honestly, with the courage and the heroes and the heroines in our community. The reason I wrote this book is because for the longest time when I was coming to terms with my homosexuality, I didn't feel like I came out of anything. I didn't feel like there was a tradition, a culture of who I was. And when I started looking into our history, I realized that I am an extension of a courageous, extraordinary group of people who has given us a history beyond belief. And that far from not coming out of anything, we come out of a great trail of tears, a great battle for justice from some remarkable individuals.
Now, in your 1996 autobiography, Stranger Among Friends, you talk about your meeting of Bill Clinton. I think you walked on Martha's Vineyard. That was sort of the first meeting?
Yeah, that's right.
And you've been through a lot of years with him. Where are you with Bill Clinton?
We're still good friends. In fact, I saw him Sunday night up in Washington. We'll see him again this Saturday night in LA. We agreed to disagree on some issues such as DOMA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He wasn't too happy when I got arrested, but he adjusted. You know, we've been friends for almost 35 years.
Well, he didn't get arrested.
Yeah.
No offense.
Yeah.
And what about Al Gore? Where are we with him?
I think it's one of the most important elections we face as a community in many, many years. Not only because of Vice President Gore versus Bush, but because the House of Representatives is up and the Senate's in play.
And the Supreme Court?
And the Supreme Court, as a result of both of those, is definitely in play. So, I mean, what we could wake up on Election Day is George Bush, Dick Armey, and Bob Barr in control of the House, and Trent Lott in control of the Senate, which would be a disaster for this community of unprecedented proportions. Or we could wake up with Dick Gebhardt, Al Gore, and Tom Daschle. And it's like 2 different worlds, you know.
So are we the definitive swing vote now, do you think, in some ways?
I think this is going to be one of the closest elections that we've ever had in our history. I'm going to talk a little bit about it tonight here at AEN. I think it could be determined by as low as 1 vote per precinct nationwide,
Wow.
as close as the Kennedy-Nixon race in 1960.
Well, our Georgia Equality Project, is now registering
Exactly.
gay voters here, and that's part of the struggle.
I'm advocating that no one should be allowed in the gay bar from the whole month of October unless they show their voter registration card.
David Mixner, we appreciate your time, and good luck in your speech
It's my
tonight.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to Atlanta.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. It's
Let me
my
give you a
pleasure.
card so you know
Great.
who you are.
Fantastic. Congratulations on doing this.
Well, it's a fairly new venture. Here's my RTV card, and this is my other.
Should be fine. 4, 3.
Hi, I'm Terrence Caldwell with Out TV Atlanta, and I'm here with Seth Persili,
Hi.
who is the founder of the
Yeah.
National
Gay and Lesbian College Fund.
Gay and Lesbian College Fund. Tell us a little bit about that.
The organization works to give scholarships, either help high school students who have had to drop out get their GEDs or college scholarships. We also try and do graduate student scholarships as well. To kids who have been adversely affected by homophobia for a whole variety of reasons. Some have to drop out of high school because of anti-gay violence. Some have to drop out of college when their parents find out they're gay. Some face all different types of reasons that gay kids are. I think the last statistic that came out showed that they were 3 times less likely to get even a high school education than their straight counterparts. We're trying to remedy that inequity in the education system.
That sounds great. How old is this program?
We're about 2 years old, a little over 2 years old. We were founded in Boston, Massachusetts.
And how many people get in touch with you to help out with the foundation?
Our local office number is 404-874-1056. You can also email me directly at Seth, SETHP, at gayfunds, GAYFUNDS.org. And that's our website as well, www.gayfunds.org.
Great. Well, thanks, Seth.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thanks. All right, well, that wasn't so bad. Thanks.
That was my first.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Joey Wills, and I'm speaking with Julie Tagan, who is from the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund. Can you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Yes, the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund is the only organization who works exclusively to elect openly gay people to elected office at all levels, from school board to United States Senate. We do that through a network of donors who we ask to support people nationwide. The interesting thing about the Victory Fund is that we are a national organization. We have candidates all over the country, from places like West Virginia, where there's not a lot of support for gay people,
So nice.
to Atlanta here, Kathy Woolard, and Carla Drenner, who is now the first openly gay person to be in the Georgia legislature. So we use this network to elect openly gay people to public office. There are 500,000 elected officials in the United States, and only 200 of them are openly gay.
Wow, well, it's such a pleasure to talk with you this afternoon, and thanks for all your work on that.
Absolutely, and we're happy to be here.
Bye-bye. Oops. Can we fade?
Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I know.
Instead of just all saying, "Hey, you can't wait to this." But what we need to do is figure out how the show's going to run. Kind of, it's kind of hard to do that because you can say up next is something else, or are you through these? Yes, yes. Just something because it's like every time it's
Segment.
right. I mean, it's fine because the way we don't probably editing on video footage and stuff like that. But it's good.
Jim. I'm doing fine. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Just, we'd ask somebody to turn the mic up a little bit. Is this for me? Oh. Okay, how's this? I think testing, 1, 2, 3. Is this any better? Have they turned it up yet? Maybe I should sing. Maybe that way. That'll bring them to the chairs. Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you for, how's that in the back? Is this mic working? We turned it up a little bit. Speak into it, just like that? Okay. Never mind. I'm not going there. I said I wasn't going there, though. This front rows. I know, you will, but I'm not going to. That's not what a president does. Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out. I'm just sort of like talking until we turn up the mic a little bit. I think we need a little more volume so we don't have to lean over into it. So, thanks for coming in out of the rain. Appreciate you being here. We have a busy schedule, so why don't I go on and get started and acknowledge some of our guests. First of all, I'd like to say someone who's not here, he couldn't stay, but Judge Bedford, I'm looking for his card. Was it Steve Jackson Bedford? Jackson Bedford, who won in the last election during summer. He came by to thank us for his vote, for our votes. He felt he did very well in some of the in-town neighborhoods, and he just wanted to come to this group. He couldn't stay, but he wanted to come back and thank us for our votes. It's very nice to have politicians come after the election as well. Okay? And we have a couple of visitors, of politicians here that I want to acknowledge. One who has been here with us a lot, and his election is coming up in November, and that's Aubrey Osteen. Aubrey, where's? Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Aubrey's running for sheriff for Fulton County. That'll be a November election. And also, first time here, I believe, we have Paul McGregor. Paul is running for the U.S. Senate on the Libertarian ticket. And thank you for coming, Paul. I think there's plenty of literature. If you'd like more information about it, there'll be literature there. Thank you very much. Okay. And some other people I'd like to acknowledge. Out TV, Patrick Maloney is Pat Maloney. I'm sorry, and Mike Maloney. I'm sorry, Mike Maloney and his dad, Patrick Maloney. Yes. And Out TV airs every Thursday at 8:30 on Media One. Or if you want to find out more specifically what, you can go to their website, which is OutTV Atlanta, one word, outtvatlanta.com. Okay, Thursdays at 8:30. Another visitor I'd like to acknowledge is Julie Tagan from the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund from Washington, D.C. You'll probably hear a little bit more about the Victory Fund later, but if you're not familiar with it, Victory Fund provides funding support for gay and lesbian candidates across the country. Very important organization, do a lot of great work. They've been very supportive for a lot of our Georgia candidates as well. So thank you for being here. And let's see, some of the other things going. Let's tell you what, this is always fun. Let's give away something. That's always fun. I'm sorry, give it to you? Okay, that's one suggestion. Let's moving right along. No, but just well, if your name is Bernardo Lopez, Bernardo, come on up, Bernardo. Bernardo, say why right here. Okay. Bernardo doesn't know what he won, but he's coming. That's pretty brave of him. And what we have for compliments of Savoy Yards and Southern Voice, we have 2 tickets.
Oh, that's great.
2 tickets for MAME.
Well, that's great.
Okay?
Thank
There
you so
go.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
You're
that.
quite welcome. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming. So that's MAME is going to be November 2nd through the 5th, and it's going to be at the Robert First Center for the Arts at Georgia Tech. Okay? And I'm sure we have a lot of understudies out there. And of course, I always like to acknowledge some of our sponsors. We have the house, fine furniture, over there, their table, right over there, and plenty of literature and plenty of locations around town. We have the Georgia Association of Physicians for Human Rights, which is an organization of physicians and medical students dedicated to promoting the medical care of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender patients. And Dan Chapman is their representative. Thank you. Also, we'd like to announce the grand opening of a new Youth Pride Center, which will be September 24th between 2 and 5 p.m. And that's at 302 East Howard Avenue in Decatur. And we all know the great work that Youth Pride does. So Youth Pride has a grand opening of their new center, September 24th, between 2 and 5. Okay. Also, I'd like to remind you of our lunches that we have during the month. Various directors will have lunches, and it's a great way to meet more members of AEN in a smaller setting and so forth. And we try to have the lunches in a variety of areas around the metro area. I host one in the perimeter area. Some people have it in Buckhead, some have it in downtown. But there's a sign-up sheet over that table over against this wall, or else you can call the office and our assistant, James Mahoney, will sign you up. But it's an excellent way to get to know other AEN members. And also, you can host a luncheon even if you don't have to be a board member or something like that to host a luncheon. If you have the desire and you like to do it, you're more than welcome. And one of our members, Doug Weaver, who is not here, I don't think this evening, correct? Doug is not here. But Doug asked me to say that he would like to start a lunch, and get this, in Duluth. So they have lunch out there, I think. And, okay, I know, cheap shot. But Doug would like to have, and he set a date of October 4th, and somewhere near the Gwinnett Place Mall. But if you're in that area, or if you know people in that area that would like to get together with other AEN members or so forth, Doug Weaver would be happy to host a lunch. So, and again, if you would like to host a lunch in your area, maybe you're not working in town and so forth, feel free to let us know and we'll publicize that as well. We think it's an excellent way to further our mission of networking in our community. So Duluth, October 4th. Okay. Also to acknowledge or remind you of some of our upcoming speakers. Next month, we have Billy Bean. Billy Bean was a baseball player who was featured in The Advocate, and he came out, and he'll be here to talk about his experiences as a Major League Baseball player and being out. Some upcoming speakers, January, we have Judy Shepard, the mother of the late Matthew Shepard, and she'll be here to speak about what's going on with the Shepard Foundation, and among other things. And I'm pretty excited. We just booked a February speaker, Nadine Strassen, who is the national president of the ACLU. And she'll be coming from New York. And I'd like to thank Don George, who's the president of the Georgia chapter of the ACLU, for his help in getting that. The ACLU has been on the forefront of a lot of our issues and so forth, and be interested to hear from her. Okay. And I think that sort of concludes. Did I leave off anything? Thank you. I knew I'd, right here. October 1st, and I'm really excited about this. Fourth Tuesday which is a lesbian networking organization. Fourth Tuesday has invited us to go to a Braves game with them. AEN and Fourth Tuesday. This is going to be October 1st. And Ann McAllister, who she has tickets, correct? Or what? Oh. I think we've heard that one before. We'll take the money, okay. But yeah, I definitely want to go. I like to see a real good showing for that. I think it's really the type of things we need to do. We need to network with other organizations. We need to connect with our sisters. And as I told the president of Fourth Tuesday when she called, I said, that'll be great. I said, now your members can explain the game to us. And we can comment on the uniforms. No, I know it's a stereotype. I know plenty of you know box scores and all that, but some of you, though, can understand. But anyway, Fourth Tuesday is a Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. And if you don't know, it's a pretty tight pennant race. The pennant is what they play for at the end. No, okay. Okay, enough of that. And also, last but not least, I'd like to thank our sponsor, without whom we would not have had our speaker, or he'd still be walking from California. But United Airlines, our sponsor for this meeting. I'd like to thank them. And I think it's important. We kind of go through this laundry list of things each meeting of who's here, who's not here. But I do think we need to pause and thank these people in the best way is by giving them our business. People who come here are coming here because they see us as a viable part of the community. Sponsors are supporting us because they see us as a viable part of the community. So to the extent that you are supporting them, appreciate if you let them know, if you feel comfortable, let them know that you found out about them through the Atlanta Executive Network or you heard about it, something like that. So again, I just want to thank all the organizations that do support us and the politicians and the people that come to us. So without further ado, why don't we go into our networking part of the organization, part of the meeting, and talk amongst yourselves. Okay. I'd like to announce that our website is coming back to life. Our website has been down for a little while, and so if you tried to access, you know that. But I think within a week, I think the next few days, we have some dedicated surgeons working on it, and I've been assured the patient will come back to life. So give us a few days, and the website will be back up. Also wanted to acknowledge that Outright has a website now. Philip has shown the Outright bookstore, Outright Atlanta. Yeah. And that's just for all the good things that Outright does. It's a pillar in the community. And he wrote down his website for me, but it's out. That was really hard to remember. I don't know. Thank you. OurightBooks.com. Okay. And also, is Doug here? Doug Brooks? I just want to thank Doug for stepping in for me last month. Okay. Welcome, and appreciate that. So without further ado, our esteemed program chair, John Lee.
It's a great honor to tonight to have David Mixner here with us. David is going to be autographing his new book, Brave Journeys, after the meeting. So please make sure to get a copy. You'll enjoy the read. It's been on the #1 bestseller list for the LA Times, and it's quite a great book. Numerous elected officials have requested David Mixner to advise them on domestic and foreign policy. His reputation as a strategist and implementer is nationally known. In addition, multiple universities have asked him to lecture. They include Oxford, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, UCLA, Princeton, and the London School of Economics. David Mixner got involved in civil rights back in the 60s with the things that occurred in the South with the sit-ins, the bus rides, the walks across bridges. He is no stranger to civil rights. He was one of the founders of the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund, and we have a couple of members of the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund here with us tonight. I think Tim Plant is with us and Julie Tagan. He was one of the founders of Angle in California, which was started when there was a law passed to ban gay people from teaching school. There's so many accomplishments in groups that David has started. He's the author of Stranger Among Friends, which made a number of bestseller lists across the country. Newsweek magazine said that David Mixner was the most powerful gay person in America. I had the privilege of attending a brunch recently in Los Angeles where Dick Gephardt, who is soon to likely be Speaker of the House, was speaking in honor of David's birthday. And Dick offered that David was not only the most powerful gay person in his campaign for the DCCC, but he said there was no single person, gay or straight, that had done more for the DCCC than David Mixner, and that's quite an accomplishment. You may have read about the recent Atlantis cruise that had a stop in Turkey. They ran into some difficulty with the folks in one of the towns in Turkey, and they rang David Mixner at 4 a.m. in the morning. David was on the phone with the White House, and within 30 minutes had the situation resolved. I had a couple of friends that were on the cruise. They said when they arrived in the next city, they literally rolled out the red carpet to the ship and had police escorts into town.
The way it should be.
The way it should be. David led a peacekeeping mission to Kosovo for the State Department, and he was on a 6-week trip for the State Department to Africa for the AIDS crisis. He has served on the President's SALT II committee, and it's amazing that this man has done all these things and he's still single and available. But no.
Thank you, John.
But I could stand here at the podium and talk for another 30 minutes on David's accomplishments, but he really is quite an extraordinary person. And please welcome David Mixner.
Thank you very much. I've got a cold tonight. They told me not to tell you, just to pretend it was my normal butch voice. But I was worried about that second date when the cold's gone. It's really nice to be here with old friends. I was here a couple years ago, and John is a dear friend, and I always answer his call when he asks me to come down. This is an important year. Very important year. Probably I've been involved. I went down south when I was 17 years old to go register African Americans to vote in 1964 in Sunflower County, Mississippi. Y'all got to visit that place sometime. And spent 30 days in a Mississippi jail. And I remember a young civil rights leader who I'd been arrested with saying, every year is important as long as your heart's in the right place and you can see the needs of others. But out of my 40 years in politics, this is one of the most important that I can believe politically, where we have so much at stake, no matter what your party or what philosophy you follow. For the first time that I can remember, the presidency, the House of Representatives, the Senate, and as a result, the Supreme Court's all in play, and the complexion of our politics for the next 10 to 20 years will be decided for us as a community. We have come a long way. You know, I, growing up, used to believe that I didn't come from anything. I didn't know any gay people. I had no role models. There were no Time magazine covers or movies of the week. Certainly people weren't coming out when I was growing up. And I thought for the longest time that I was the only one. And I thought I came from nothing. And when you think you come from nothing, sometimes you act it. And you feel that you have nothing to give. Well, one of the things that I determined when I came out was that I was going to learn my history. I was going to learn what I did come from. I was going to search our roots of who made it possible for me to stand in front of you tonight. And what I found was an extraordinary rich history of heroic people who changed the world as openly gay people long before I thought that they even existed. One of the things that I'm doing now is a screenplay, which is being made into a movie about Wilhelm Adornius. Wilhelm was an openly gay man in Amsterdam in the 1930s. When the Nazis invaded, he became one of the leaders in the underground. He personally put together a commando team of 12 men to burn down the Hall of Records because the Nazis were using the Hall of Records to compare papers for Jewish citizens to take them to concentration camps. And he led this team and he burned down the Hall of Records, the only commando raid in the history of World War II in Amsterdam, and saved tens of thousands of Jewish lives. And when they arrested him, and they took him out to be executed in the sand dunes of Overveen, and they asked him for his last words, Wilhelm stepped forward and said, just tell him I was a homosexual and I saved thousands of Jewish lives. That's how I want to be remembered. That's coming from something. He gives us courage, he gives us dignity, he gives us a history, he gives us a culture. He gives us pride. If you look at the book that I've been writing, I was so honored to write about these people. Phyllis Lyon and Del Martin, together 50 years as a couple, who had suffered police raid after police raid, who had to hide their membership list in the trunk of the car, and they would meet at midnight and transfer the list to another car and another car to keep it ahead of the police, who would turn it over to the papers and print the list of homosexuals in San Francisco in the early 1950s. Or Elaine Noble, who campaigned for office under armed guard with 2 Massachusetts state troopers. Her car was smashed, her home was broken into, her life was threatened, and she became the first openly gay or lesbian person ever elected to office in this United States. Or Ian McKellen, who came out to fight Section 28, which forbid the teaching about homosexuality in the schools in England. Or Tracy Thorn. Talk about courage. It's one of my favorite passages where he's standing in his Navy dress whites as a Top Gun fighter pilot in front of a court-martial. And they would ask him a question, and he'd look at him, and all he kept saying is, I'm just like you. I'm just like you. And they'd ask him another question, and he'd look at him, and standing in rigid attention in front of this court-martial board and said, I'm just like you. Or Roberta Achtenberg, whose child and relationship was dragged through the mud by Jesse Helms in the United States Senate. Or Diane Hardy Garcia, one of my favorite stories in the end. Diane was extraordinary. She was not very involved. She was working on the AIDS crisis in Austin, Texas, and she kept noticing in the newspaper that gay men were being beaten to death in Texas, where it was becoming like Friday night football, Saturday night gay bashing by young students. And she noticed that no one was going out to actively look for the killers of these gay men. 18 in 18 months. Higher than the highest year for lynching in the state of Texas. And so she got in her pickup truck, of course, and drove all over the state of Texas alone, tracking down the killers of gay men, bringing them to justice, forcing local rural sheriffs in Texas to file charges, following up to make sure that they were prosecuted. One night she was in Odessa, Texas, and they had to hug the floor of the trailer park that they were staying in because gunfire was threatened to go through the trailer. These are people who make it possible for us to sit in this room. These are what we come from. An extraordinary, rich, heroic history of people. We could fill 6 books, 16 books of the people that we had choices who stood up and in the face of great danger and great pressure didn't flinch because they had a concept of a greater good. They had a vision that no young people should have to suffer the journey that they were suffering, that they believed in their dignity and self-worth and value, and that they could make it if they just held to that value and to that dignity. The one common theme from all these stories is not one of them was willing to yield 1 ounce of their dignity to appease the oppressors. They would not bend. They would not quake in fear. I don't know how many of you in this room plan to vote this year. But I'll tell you this, as I read that history. If you're not registered, shame on you. How dare you? Too many people have died to get us here. Too many people would give anything to be amongst us today to be registered to vote. I don't care if you disagree with me. You'd be wrong, of course. But to not participate when so many people have made such great sacrifices for us to be in this room. No group should understand more than our community what it means to be allowed to be at the table. My partner was a man named Peter Scott. He died in 1989 of AIDS. I loved him dearly. We were together 12 years. In 1988, he had just a few months to live. And he had been in bed for 4 months. And I went in September and said, Peter, I want to fill out an absentee ballot for you, though quite honestly, I didn't think he'd make the election. And he said, no, I plan to vote that day. Now, he had not been out of bed for 4 months. I knew he wasn't going to vote that day, but I didn't have the heart to tell him that he wasn't going to vote that day. I said, of course you are. Forgive me for asking. Come November, I came down to fix breakfast. He was lay there in bed. He says, I'm ready to vote. And I said, Peter, you can't. You haven't been out of bed in months. You have no energy. He was emaciated. He hardly had any weight left on him. He said, oh, yes, I can. I have to vote because I am in this bed. I have to vote because I don't want anyone else to be in this bed. 3 of us carried him to the car, laid him in the back seat, took him to the polling place, which was in a private house up a driveway. And he pushed us away and almost like Jane Pittman walked up that driveway by himself to cast his vote. Came out of the voting booth and collapsed, and we had to carry him home. How dare you not be registered? How you dishonor people like Peter Scott, who would give anything to be here today, to participate in this great, remarkable history and journey that we all are a part of. Albert Lord Tennyson, his last lines of Ulysses really applies to us in this community and our history. Bobby Kennedy used to close it with many of his speeches when I was working for him. I'm going to roughly paraphrase it, so forgive me if any of you are English professors, I apologize ahead of time. But it says, "Come, my friends, it's not too late to seek a newer world. For our purpose holds a sail beyond the vast of all the western stars. We are what we are, one heroic temper of hearts, made weak by time but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and never, never to yield. We come from something. We come from a rich, wonderful heritage and history. Now it's up to us to live up to it and to live up to their courage." Thank you very much.
We'll take some questions. If you want to write down your questions, is James here? James? Yeah, maybe James will help me collect questions. James is our new assistant, by the way, doing a great job. So let's.
And while the questions are coming up, there are discount coupons at each seat for United Airlines, significant discounts off of airfare for your enjoyment.
And the coupons are not discount for my book. While they're writing questions, anyone have a quick one I can answer? Yes, Michael. Mention lots of heroes. Who's number one? Who's my personal hero? Mahatma Gandhi. I'll tell you all a story. I was in Africa for, you mind if I share a little story? I'm in a sort of homey mood tonight, you know what I mean? It must be the cold, the medicine made me do it. I just returned from Africa where I spent 6 weeks in Kenya and Uganda and Ethiopia doing 2 things, working in AIDS clinics as a volunteer, because I think it's one of the great moral issues of our time. 25 million people will die unless we as a people respond. And I felt I had to make a pilgrimage to give witness to my moral concern. But also the Dutch government asked me to help because Kenya and Uganda has recently passed life imprisonment for being homosexual. And they had rounded up about 600, 300, 400, 500. And one of the ways that you can get people like our State Department, who was more than willing, and the Dutch Foreign Ministry and some others, was you document the human rights abuses. So you have hard evidence of the roundups and the dissidents and so forth. And this is a long story, but what the hell. And get you a chance to get some questions up here. But to make a long story more brief, we went out into the countryside, Navasha, up to the Ethiopia-Uganda border and some places that I wasn't quite sure I was coming back from. And what we found out was that most of the people who were being rounded up were not gay. About 2/3 of the people who were being rounded up were gay. Not gay, about 1/3 were gay. It turns out the gays were only being rounded up as cover. The foreign minister of Kenya said, well, who's going to criticize us from arresting our political dissidents? They found a new way to arrest their dissidents by declaring that they're gay, knowing that they would not receive any international condemnation because, after all, it was only homosexuals being rounded up. And the foreign minister of Kenya looked at me and said, you mean to tell me that the United States is going to criticize me on homosexual rights? And I was struck by how we had no moral force internationally to deal with this issue. But it started on the story of my hero, Mahatma Gandhi. I'm a devout pacifist and have been willing to go to jail for my beliefs on that thing. I went up to Kuki Kalman. I don't know if any of you saw that horrible movie, I Dream of Africa, but she's not a horrible person. She's a great person. And went up to visit her, and her ranch was being used as a sanctuary by Ethiopian rebels. And she warned me that we could be kidnapped doing some of the work we were doing up on the border. And so she was going to give me an armed guard named Beggy. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't be around guns. That's just who I am. I don't expect Beggy to take any risk or anyone else for my beliefs. But I just can't. That's how I live. That's who I am. And Beggy stepped forward and said, I'll go with you. I'm a follower of Mahatma Gandhi too. So he put down his gun, and we went into the wilderness, way out in the middle of nowhere, and we had a thatch hut. And and he explained to me that if they come to kidnap us, the thing to do is get your jeans on and your shoes on, because they'll force march you long distances, and your feet will be shredded in the brush, and they'll get infected, and you could be in serious trouble if you couldn't keep up. So we were sleeping one night, in the middle of the night, pounding on the door about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, oh, shit. I was scared to death. And they kept pounding, and we quickly got our jeans on and our Gore-Tex boots on, and, you know, I wanted to be coordinated. Yeah. Just in case there were any photographers. I am gay, you know. And I said, why aren't they breaking down the door, Becky? And he said, I don't know, but they sound like they're getting angry, and I'll go open it. I said, no, I got you in this mess with no gun. I'll go open it. So I went over and opened the door, and standing in the doorway was a 4-foot-high baboon who had been pounding on the door. It saw me, screeched 10 feet high, and went off into the brush. I saw it, screeched, jumped 10 feet high, and went back in the house. But I felt I had my beliefs tested at that moment. Questions?
What do you think about HRC's decision to endorse both candidates in the Vermont Senate race, the gay Democrat and the gay-friendly incumbent Republican?
I thought it was a wise decision, actually. Jeffers has been an extraordinary friend of ours. He is one of the first Republican co-sponsors of the ENDA in the United States Senate. I know that Ed Flanagan, who's running against him, is happy with the decision. I think the reason they did a dual endorsement is because it is a historical race. No matter what the outcome, I don't think Ed's going to win, but I don't know. I've seen upsets happen before in my life. But the fact of the matter is he is the first openly gay man or lesbian ever to be the nominee of a major party for the United States Senate in this country. And if he should win, he'd be our Ed Brooke, the first ever to sit in that august body as an openly gay man or lesbian. So I thought it was a wise decision. I was glad that they acknowledged the historical significance of the race and also remembered a good friend.
I'm going to combine two questions because I think they're sort of somewhat related. One is, what are your feelings now towards Bill Clinton after fundraising for him twice and now witnessing his corruption? But then there's another question. Well, I'll let you respond to that one.
I'm the nasty one. Well, I disagree with the question. I mean, let me just say that. I mean, whatever you think of Bill Clinton's policies, I don't think he's a corrupt individual. I think he's a human individual and has made some personal mistakes. But then I don't know many of us in this room who haven't at some time in their life. Bill Clinton and I are probably the closest we've ever been. We've agreed to disagree. As you know, I went to jail one time over one of his policies. I actually didn't raise money in 1996 because I disagreed with DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act. On principle, I set out that election. I voted for him. If he had been in trouble, quite honestly, I would have campaigned very hard, but he wasn't, and I had that luxury not to, and to make a point, and a value which made them quite upset. I went to Amsterdam instead. Tough assignment, huh? And lived on a houseboat and wrote the screenplay and did research for the screenplay. I think Bill Clinton has been one of the greatest presidents in history for the gay and lesbian community, and we will remember him fondly for years and years to come. I remember a time just 8 years ago when it was against the law for us to serve in the State Department, against the law to be in the FBI, against the law to be in the FBI, against the law to have security clearance, against the law to be in Head Start, against the law to be in Peace Corps. If you were an open homosexual, and I just touched a few of them, and we can now serve with dignity openly in all of them. In every agency, every cabinet level of government, an executive order has been issued where that has opened up. We have seen people like Sean Maloney, a staff secretary to the President of the United States. At one time, at the early part of this year, we had 4 openly gay and lesbian people in the senior White House staff. We have people, he has now set us up to where I think that it is not unheard of and not or unreasonable for us to expect that we should have a cabinet level position in the near future. We have done our homework, we have put our energy in the field. I think he has had a remarkable record for the gay and lesbian community, though I have disagreed with him publicly at times. He has been upset with me, and I've been upset with him, but we've agreed to disagree, and I just saw him Sunday night. I'm going to see him again this Saturday night, and I'm proud to be a friend of his.
And I think you just answered this question, which was, how did you and President Clinton heal your differences in friendship?
Slowly. When I got arrested, he was upset. I was the first person to be arrested in his administration who had been one of his supporters. I was kind of proud of that. And he was very upset. And I was told that I was no longer welcomed in the White House and no longer welcomed in Washington, and not even to think about coming back in again. And I said, well, that's just fine, because I know I did what I had to do. It was 4 months that we didn't speak, and they actually went into the papers, the Wall Street Journals and others, and said that Mixner is persona non grata, and my clients weren't too thrilled, and I lost some business, and it was a little rough patch, but I'm stubborn, you know, I'm very stubborn. And about November, sort of on the level of the Israeli-Arab peace talk, someone approached me and said, would I be willing to see the president again if he would extend the invitation? And I said, yes, I would be thrilled to see him. I miss him, but only if it's not construed as endorsing the don't ask, don't tell policy, because I think it's a disaster, which it has proven to be. I said I cannot do that at that price, at the price of what I believe is a policy that is damaging people's lives in a dramatic way. And so some more messages went back and forth, and I ended up in Washington. I think it was December 3rd of '93, about 4 or 5 months later. And the phone rang, and it was the president in my hotel room, and he said, would you like to come over and have a cup of coffee? And I said, do I get to come in the front door or the back door? He said, you can walk up front. And I said, well, okay, just so you know, the press is out there. They're going to want to know what I'm doing. So I went up, and the press was up there, and I told them I was delivering pizza for the White House staff, that I wasn't been unable to get work since I got arrested. I was a Domino's man. I only wish I could have found the Domino's hat to put on that night. And we had an hour-and-a-half meeting in the Oval Office, which was very emotional, quite honestly, as it can be between two friends who's had a falling out. And we agreed to disagree, which we did again on DOMA, but maintained our friendship from it and been in close touch ever since. I guess that answers it.
What do you think of George W., and how about the outcome of the election?
Y'all know what I think of George W. You don't need me to tell you that. I don't think George W. is an evil man. I'm very careful how I portray people in politics, because I've seen people, in the interest of partisanship, paint with a very broad brush that doesn't add to the dialogue and careful consideration and thoughts of issues. I don't agree with him. He killed the hate crimes bill in Texas. He's against gays adopting children. He is not there on our issues. He has a constituency within his party that's just part of his party that it makes it difficult for him to be adventuresome on our rights. In my mind, and I'll just say real clearly, if you look at our issues, there is no ifs, ands, or buts that we will do better with Al Gore as president than we will do with George W. And I think the worst scenario I can point is if Trent Locke is Majority Leader of the United States Senate and Tom DeLay is Speaker of the House and George W. is the president. I invite you all to join me in Amsterdam. Because I think it will be a hard 4 years for us. But he, I think he is not Tom DeLay. He is not Bob Barr. He is not the hardcore right. But he does not so far seem to have the courage to stand up to him, which is a great disappointment. And
This is our final question. What would be your advice to Al Gore when elected president regarding gays in the military?
immediately sponsor legislation to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell and allow gays to serve openly and with dignity and honor in our nation's military services. You know? Allow our young to have their heroes. I'm a pacifist. I find it just ironic as hell that as a pacifist I'm fighting for people's right to serve in the military. Can you believe that? But it's not my choice, again, to decide who gets to have equality and who not based on my personal beliefs. I think Al Gore was our strongest advocate behind the scenes in the Don't Ask, Don't Tell debate. I think he will be very good. Unfortunately, because of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, which is a disaster, it was codified into law. Is codified the right word? It was put into law. And it will take an act of Congress to overturn it. I believe deeply if Gore is president and we take back the House, even if we don't take back the Senate, there are a number of Republicans who will join us that we can overturn Don't Ask, Don't Tell and open up. We are the last industrialized nation in the world that doesn't allow gays and lesbians in the military. Australia, Canada, Britain, France, Sweden, all allow. It was remarkable. When I was in the Netherlands, I had dinner with the Deputy Joint Chief of Staff of the Dutch military and his lover. Very grateful to be here. And John, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. David, we're certainly very honored to have had you with us tonight. We appreciate so much you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. And David will be autographing books at the table, and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.